All right. So today is day 2 of week 7, and we're starting with lesson 5. You'll need your close reader or your magazine, pages 4 and 5, and your companion or yellow packet, page 3. And today we're going to talk about determining the meaning of domain specific vocabulary. Remember that when you read informational text, you may encounter unfamiliar words or phrases that are domain specific. That means that they are related specifically to the content of the text. For example, in Yankee Doodle Boy, there are words related to the military. Our lesson will focus on using reference materials to define some of the domain specific words in Yankee Doodle Boy. So you can see some that are listed there that are examples of domain specific vocab, but we will just focus on 3 for today. So the first one that we're going to take a look at is in the introduction, and it is the word enlisted. So what you want to do is take a look in your packet, and let me go ahead and go forward to it for you. And right here, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look at the introduction, and I'd like you to write down anything that you think is a context clue that gives you the meaning of enlisted. And remember, because you're going to be taking straight from the text, you do need to put them in quotation marks, okay? So he became one of the 200,000 who enlisted to fight the British in the American Revolution. So I want you to look through the rest of this paragraph and think to yourself, what might be some context clues that tell me what enlisted mean? Put them into this page, and when you're ready, turn the video back on so that we can take a look together at the context clues that I found. So the ones that I found are wanted to help the new nation, became one of about 200,000, and fight the British. Okay, so now that you have those down, now I'd like you to take a stab at what you think the definition of enlisted is. And I'd like you to write that in your chart. And then I will reveal the actual definition. And this time it is either joined, signed up, or volunteered for service. And I just got those from an online dictionary. Okay. So joined, signed up, volunteered for service. When you're ready, you're going to go on to siege. And we see it in both paragraphs 3 and 8. You are going to take a look at where the words are. You are going to, again, in your packet, you are going to write down the context clues that you find, okay? And then I'd like you to also take a stab at that definition, okay? So turn it off, and when you're ready, turn it back on. Here in paragraph 3, we now began to make preparations for laying close siege to the enemy. Before night, we were informed that the British had surrendered and that the siege was ended. So this time around, some of the context clues you might have found is one, if you went back to paragraph 2, would be encamped in their neighborhood. In paragraph 3, began to make preparations. And in paragraph 8, the British had surrendered. And if you put all of those things together, you may have seen that siege means a battle. They were going to have a siege, a battle against them. Okay. Our last word that we'll take a look at is detachment in paragraph 7. We had not lain here long before the expected signal was given. The word up was then reiterated through the detachment. We immediately moved silently on toward the redoubt we were to attack. Once again, I'd like you to turn off the video, record what you think are the context clues around the word detachment, and then you'll take a stab at what you think the meaning is, and then turn the video back on. Okay, some of the context clues I found were the expected signal was given, reiterated through the detachment, and therefore a definition is a group of soldiers on a particular mission. Okay, that's the dictionary definition. So when you come upon domain specific words in a story, Oftentimes you have to use the context clues around them because they may not be words that you're familiar with because they're related to the topic that you're studying, not necessarily words you hear in everyday usage. Okay? All right, so down at the bottom, please give this one a try. The passage says the word up, up was then reiterated through the detachment, which meaning of the word detachment fits the way it is used in this context. And you're given 4 different definitions there. And we come with 2, a group of troops, just like we talked about at the top of our page. Okay, we're going to move on to another section, another text called Road to Revolution. And we are once again going to determine 2 or more main ideas and explain how the key details support them. So you are going to start by skimming Road to Revolution, which is on pages 6 through 9. And think about what you think the title means and what will we be reading about based on when you skim it. And you'll also need your companion packet or your yellow packet on page 4 today. Okay. First thing I'd like you to do is set up page 4 to look just like this because we're going to break it into the 4 parts. We'll do a main idea for the introduction, for the section called Anger Builds, the section called To Fight or Not, and the section called Declaring Independence. So after you have set yours up like this, or turn off the video if you need to, and then turn it back on when you have set up your page like this, and we'll get started maybe with the first section. Okay, what I'd like you to do here is as I read the Road to Revolution with your pencil, you are going to underline what you think are the key details. Then we'll go over them together and think about a main idea. So Road to Revolution by Susan Buckley. For 150 years, Great Britain's 13 American colonies had had time to grow and change. More than 3,000 miles of ocean separated those colonies from the mother country. By the mid-1700s, the colonists still thought of themselves as British citizens, but they also considered themselves Virginians and New Yorkers, Pennsylvanians and Georgians, all part of their colonial identity. They also thought of themselves as Americans. Mostly, Britain had left the colonies alone during those years. While the colonists saw themselves as Americans, the British saw them as an economic resource. The colonists' duty was to supply resources such as sugar and tobacco to Britain and to buy British goods. Otherwise, the colonists mainly governed themselves. So here's what I thought were the key details. And so take a moment to highlight any that you did not underline. And then what I'd like you to do is in your own words, think about what the main idea for just this section, the introduction of the Road to Revolution, might be. Write it down in your booklet and then turn back on the video when you're ready to roll. Okay, so the main idea of their introduction, the way that I put it together was the colonists were beginning to think of themselves as Americans instead of just British. Okay. All right, we'll move on to our next section of Anger Builds. Okay, I will read this to you. Once again, pencils out, and you are underlining. That's Gabby barking because her dinner's coming. So sorry about that. You are going to underline whatever you think are the key details. Anger builds. All of this changed in the 1760s after the French and Indian War. Defending the colonies in that war had cost the British a great deal. So the British Parliament decided the colonies should help pay the bills. But they made that decision without any input from the colonists. Unlike other British citizens, the American colonists had no representatives in Parliament. They had no chance to vote on the taxation the British decided to impose on the colonies. In 1765, Parliament passed the Stamp Act, which taxed many everyday items colonists used. A few years later, the Townshend Acts taxed things like the tea the colonies imported from Britain. On it went as Parliament passed taxes and regulations that colonists despised and resented. The colonists began to rebel. Calling themselves patriots, they formed committees such as the Sons of Liberty and the Daughters of Liberty. They began to protest British actions. At first, as patriot John Adams later said, the revolution was in the minds and hearts of the people. Soon, however, rebellion would take other forms. Okay, so here are some of the things that I thought were the key details. So go ahead and highlight those. Then take a moment to record what you think is the main idea of this section. And then when you're ready, turn the video back on. Okay, so for Anger Builds, what I came up with as the main idea was the colonists became angry when Britain began controlling their way of life against their wills. So they had no say in it. They were just having these things put upon them. Next section, to fight or not. In 1769, George Washington expressed his hope that the colonies could avoid military action. Washington was then a member of the Virginia legislature, the House of Burgesses. He wrote in a letter, "At a time when our lordly masters in Great Britain will be satisfied with nothing less than the deprivation of American freedom, it seems highly necessary that something should be done to maintain the liberty which we have derived from our ancestors, but the manner of doing it is the point in question. That no man should scruple or hesitate a moment to use arms in defense of so valuable a blessing on which all the good and evil of life depends, is clearly my opinion. Yet arms, I would beg leave to add, should be the last resource." George Washington favored commercial actions such as boycotting or refusing to buy British goods. But soon enough, the colonists took up arms against Great Britain. The fighting began in Massachusetts, which was a hotbed of rebellion from the beginning. The first casualties were in Boston when British soldiers fired on a group of colonists. Patriots called it the Boston Massacre. Okay, so you're going to turn off your video at this time, and you are going to highlight anything you haven't yet, and you're going to give the main idea a try and turn it back on when you're ready. Okay, so we have our two, and to fight or not fight. In 1769, George Washington expressed his hope that the colonies could avoid military action. And that one's in quotes because I took it right from the text because I thought it gave the best one. Okay. All right. We're going to then move on to the next one here. And it's declaring independence. 6 years after Washington's letter, Patrick Henry took a very different position. Henry also was a member of Virginia's House of Burgesses. In a speech in March of 1775, he said, "It is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. Gentlemen may cry, 'Peace, peace,' but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Why stand we here idle? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." Patrick Henry was correct. Less than a month after his speech, the first shots of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington, outside of Boston. A little more than a year later, in July 1776, the American colonies demanded their independence from Great Britain. They declared themselves free and independent states, the United States of America. So once again, highlight anything that you haven't already, and then put down your main idea. And the one I came up with was that Patrick Henry believed that war was the only option left to the colonists. Okay, notice you are choosing 2 this time. Whoa, it went past and I showed you the answer, but we'll still take a look at it. You're choosing two here. What was the source of anger for the American colonists? The British defended the colonies during the French and Indian War, and that cost Great Britain a great deal. There were no American colonists representing the colonies in Parliament. The British passed laws that taxed the American colonists on everyday items. The colonists rebelled and called themselves patriots. So, a source of anger for the American colonists. Okay. They wouldn't really care in A that it was costing Great Britain a great deal. Okay, so it's not going to be A. And D, the colonists rebelled and called themselves patriots, is not a source of anger either. So, as I accidentally showed you earlier, B, there were no American colonists representing the colonies in Parliament. So, Parliament over in England, the government over there was making all the decisions without asking the American colonists what they wanted. And the British laws were passed that taxed things that they bought every day, like tea and use stamps and things like that. Okay, we're going to do one more section today, introducing words with a final EL and ER. You'll notice that the E is upside down in those, and it's something that's called the schwa sound. So if you take a look at colonial and sugar, okay, the letters AL and AR at the end of each word are unaccented syllables. In an unaccented syllable, the vowel sound is not long or short. It is often represented by the schwa sound, colonial, sugar. In a pronunciation key, the schwa looks like the upside down E. In many words, the final schwa sound is followed by an R or an L. So later, people, harbor. Okay, a vowel ending with either an R or an L at the end. Okay, so what you're going to do today is in your pink packet, pages 22 and 23, okay, you're going to take a look up at the top of the page, loyal, capable, lunar, consider, and minor. You're going to write those into the correct boxes of how they're spelled at the end. And then you are going to sort out the words that are listed in the middle box into the correct columns. Circular, natural, calculator, laborer, fiddle, senator, article, farther, molar, and central. And then on page 23, you are going to write a sentence for each of the words: another, battle, doctors, honor, hospitals, and medical. Now, if you don't have time to complete these right now, you can complete these during your enrichment time this afternoon in your hour of enrichment. So it's okay if you have spent enough time on your reading right now, want to take a break, then feel free to complete these 2 pages during your enrichment time later. Okay? So tomorrow we're going to take a look at how authors use reasons and evidence to support particular points. So I will see you then. Oops, that's a skip. And I will see you tomorrow with some more of where we left off.